Today, we're very fortunate to have a few presentations. The first presentation is going to be from Influx, who are digital marketing experts in the aesthetic space. And following that, Doug and I will have some questions and discussion with Max Bayback from Influx. So we'll go ahead with that first presentation now.
Hello, Aesthetic Society members. My name is Max Bayback, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer as well as a co-founder of Influx Medical Marketing. And I wanted to give you a quick talk today covering 8 things that you can do to increase your website's conversion rate in 2021. Now, this is going to be a pretty quick talk, so I'm going to go through it rather fast. But if there are any questions afterward, I'd be more than happy to help. So let's dive right in. First things first is professional design. Now, this may seem like somewhat of a no-brainer, but there are many templated solutions out there. And in order to stay competitive in the marketplace today, it's often necessary to enlist the services of a professional design agency or individual to make sure that your website is up to date with modern design trends. I often say that aesthetics really matter in aesthetics. And the point of what I'm trying to convey there is that when someone is looking at their options for surgical or aesthetic enhancement, you can bet that they're judging that practice based on the first impression that they have in a visual sense. And in other words, your taste and your aesthetic matter, just like it matters when they walk into your practice and they get a certain feeling based on the aesthetic of your practice itself. Let's look at a couple examples. Here's a website that we designed and built for a facial plastic surgeon in Newport Beach, California. And you can see here we're leveraging clean, modern design as well as some fun and fancy animations to really create a very nice first impact. Here's another example of a website we built for Dr. Barry DiBernardo in New Jersey. And you can see again here, animations, clean design, nice cohesive photo selection, a minimalist but well-organized design approach that really tells the person that they're in the right place. And finally, here's another example for a facial plastic surgeon in West Palm Beach. Your lowest hanging fruit when you're trying to increase, new traffic through the door is not getting more people to your website, but actually just converting more of the people that are already coming. So design really matters. However, it's not just making it look beautiful. It's also about making sure the user experience and the user interface has certain key features that really make a big difference in conversion. So let's go into some of those. One of the things, again, seems like a no-brainer is responsive design. Now, we've long since passed the days where some people have a website that's not responsive and some people are. However, to make sure that a website is truly mobily responsive, it needs to be dialed in a little bit more than just sort of squished into a mobile format. So here's an example in this graphic, and we can go into a whole talk on that, but it's really important to make sure that your mobile experience is customized for mobile. As I'm sure you're aware, an overwhelming amount of the traffic that's coming to most of your websites is coming from mobile, so this is key. Okay, so the next thing up is sticky calls to action. What do I mean by sticky? That's the word we use for something you'll see here in this graphic, that as the person is scrolling the website, the header sticks to the top. We call that a sticky header. So now we've got certain calls to action in the header here that we want to make sure are accessible to the website visitor at all times. This is relatively simple, but it's a huge difference maker. And it's also crucial, just like we talked about with mobile, to make sure that the same experience is available on mobile. So here's an example back to that website in Newport Beach that I previously showed you, where we have a click to call button and a book an appointment button, which is sticking there at the bottom no matter where they scroll on the website. Always accessible. We never make them look for that. Okay, so the next point is social proof. This isn't strictly speaking a design or a user interface point. However, I decided to include it on the list because it is essential to increasing your conversion rate, and it's a place where you can get a really easy win. There's a number of ways that you can add social proof to your website, but what we mean by social proof is third-party validation that tells the consumer that you're a trustworthy source. So here I'm showing an example on a website of us using some press outlets, some awards and directories that have validated and recognized the doctor here in this case. Here on the same site, we also have various associations. And then lastly, another form of social proof that can be used are testimonials and showcasing your reviews. These logos and things that are instantly recognizable to a person tell them subconsciously that you're trustworthy. The next point is an easy to use menu. So here's an example in this graphic of a very robust website where we did some innovative things to get all of that content in there, but yet make it simple to find whatever the website visitor is looking to find. Here's another example of a menu we created on another website, which is much simpler, but an elegant solution that also lays out all the content very nicely and neatly and makes it easy for them to find whatever they might be looking for. And again, it's important to make sure that these experiences are not just only on your desktop and then falling short on mobile. Again, that's where the overwhelming amount of traffic is typically coming from in most markets. So here's an example of a mobile menu that packs in all that same robust level of content that we saw on the desktop experience, and yet makes it really easy for the user to find anything they might be looking for. The next point up here is in-page navigation. In some cases, you might have quite a lot of content on your site, and you want to make it easier for the consumer to find that content. So here's an example where they can click on a link right there, and it jumps them down to the appropriate section, and it also indicates that they're in that section. In some cases, you might have way too much content, and so there are other solutions. Here's another example. It does cover up some of the page, but you can click that little X right there, and it minimizes it. And that's a good solution for a more robust page that makes it easy for the user to get to whatever it is that they might be looking for. It's a really important point in increasing conversion to make sure that your website visitor can find what they're looking for, because nothing makes them leave a website quicker. Next up is a frictionless gallery. When it comes to aesthetic medicine, plastic surgery, or medical spas, the gallery solution is paramount. So here's an example of something we did where we actually put the gallery embedded in the page for the procedure. This actually has a lot of benefit to it from an SEO standpoint too, because Google is paying attention to how much time they're spending on the page. We'd rather not fragment the experience and send them away to another gallery, but let them stay on that page and peruse the galleries. However, they can also dive into any specific patient and then go look at further images, which helps them have kind of the best of both experiences. Lastly, we have intelligent lead capture. We're seeing a trend right now where web chat is coming back in a big way, and we've experimented with this quite a bit. And here's an example of a web chat that we provide our customers that allows a visitor to start the conversation on the website and then move it over to text. And if you're not using a solution like that, I would venture to say there are probably some leads being left on the table, because SMS is a channel that the consumer is really preferring these days. Another thing here that I want to point out, this isn't so much for conversion rate, but once you get the lead, there are some interesting things you can do in terms of data gathering that help you to convert that lead to the next step. So we have a question here about a decision stage that helps the practice to understand where the person's at and sort of triage and prioritize their leads as they come in. All right, so that was it. That's a very quick overview, and there were more things that we wanted to include here, but couldn't quite fit it all in here, and we wanted to make sure that we covered those things which would give you the quickest wins. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us using the contact information here, or you can visit us at influxmarketing.com. Thank you very much.
All right, we are back. Wow, a lot of great information, a lot of great material. So here we have with us Max Fayback, Maxim, the long form, as we just learned. Max, it's been really great to learn a little bit more about the company. And we always, first of all, want to thank you for your involvement and your support with the aesthetic series today. Now, I have a couple of questions for you. The first question is like, we all need to know what direction we want to go in, from the newest guys and ladies out there to even the most experienced, like Grant Stevens, people that know everything about everything. So what is the next trend? Do we keep our money on the website, or we move more into Instagram? Do we stay with YouTube, or do we keep on going with Facebook? Where should the people out there watching today, where should they put their dime?
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic question. It's one we get all the time. And the reality is we're always watching trends in the digital marketing space, because it's a landscape that's constantly changing, and it's important to keep our finger on that pulse. We try to advise our clients as we see changes. But one thing that's a constant for us, a constant bit of advice we always give, is to kind of always focus on what we call sort of the hub and spoke strategy. And what I mean by that is the hub is your website, and then the spokes are all the various channels you can use to feed into that. And it's important to remain relatively diversified. It's sort of, I almost view it like, I've had some experience in the financial world, and I constantly find parallels between the marketing world and finance. And it's actually important to think about how you remain diversified and you don't put your eggs into too much of one basket. You might find certain things that work well, and you're gonna pour onto those for sure. But you can also get over leveraged into one area of patient acquisition and put yourself at risk. So it's always important to build on your, when you build up a presence on these other platforms, I use the analogy that you're building property on land that you don't own. And that can be dangerous. So really build things that you own. And that's your own website, all the content that exists there, and your mailing list, actually, I would say is really important. That's becoming, I think, relevant again in new ways, and email is really important. So I would say at the core, you need to build those assets up and not lose sight of that. And then when it comes to those other platforms, I always advise, again, similar to the financial analogy, that, you know, there are certain types of investments that meet your goals and that are suited to your risk tolerance and so forth, or your long-term, what your time horizons are. Some social media platforms require a lot of your own time and effort and a real long-term view. Some advertising channels pay back much quicker and maybe more suited to you. You may be really the type of personality who wants to be making video content all the time, or you may be more interested in writing, you know, articles that are informative, and that might be more your style. So you can spend more time on Google, creating content for Google, or maybe using blogging platforms like Medium. So it is a little bit personal. Again, we're always watching. What I would say just blanketly is that when it comes to surgery, aesthetic surgery, there's good, healthy demand on search. When I talk about that, I'm really talking about Google. And that means creating great organic content and running paid advertising on Google tends to work really well. It can be a bit more expensive than other platforms, but you get very high intent patients who have sought you out and usually you'll find they're low in the funnel and they've given a lot of thought to the surgery they're considering doing. So by the time they come to you, they've done research, they're farther along. And so for that reason, the first place I would invest my money from an advertising or even an organic strategy is Google. And then there are other things from there, but we probably don't have time to go into it all for right now. But that's kind of my best answer. Quick answer.
Oh, that's great advice. I mean, I think also it depends on the style of your practice. If you're doing, you have older patients and doing a practice with facelifts or something like that, you probably want to trend more toward Facebook or Google or your website versus, you know, a younger breast aug practice. You may do a little bit more TikTok kind of things, but I don't think I think you really need to know who your audience is and what your demo is. Wouldn't you say that's also the case?
Really solid point. Looking at what your demo is, that's obviously many times mapped to the procedures that you want to specialize in, and then looking at the channels and where that demographic hangs out online, so to speak, is super important. So super solid point, Doug. And if you'd like a job as a marketing strategist.
I've learned a thing or two over the years. The other thing is, speaking of Google, you were just talking about this. We were speaking a little bit about this last time at the Breast Body, about what's up with this Google antitrust suit. And do you have any update on that? And how would that affect our decision on where we want to put our money, into Google or into other things like TikTok?
Yeah, really good question. It's honestly very early, and there's not really anything no way that we're recommending people react to it yet. And honestly, when we spoke at Breast and Body and my CEO and I gave that talk, we were just looking really far ahead at what might form into a trend that we need to pay attention to. Again, that's something we're kind of obsessed with, is paying attention so that we know what's happening and we're watching the things happen and change. And when it becomes relevant, we can advise on it. Right now, there's not anything to react to it with, just yet. But there is a kind of a rumor that there may be another antitrust suit coming with several attorneys general from other states. We're waiting to see what happens there. Interestingly, during this time, with the antitrust suit still pending, Google completed its acquisition, which has been in the works for a long time, of Fitbit. What's really interesting about that in the healthcare space is Fitbit and wearables brings it in this whole concept of Google rolling in personal health data into their platform, which is interesting as a marketer and also kind of scary in a way. But in this case, they did make the agreement that they would not integrate it into their other platforms. So I think that's quite interesting. Makes me wonder exactly why they're making that acquisition at this point, because I don't see the value for them if they don't roll it in. But right now, I don't think that Google's going to lose its dominance overnight, but where that case ends is what we're really watching, to see if it opens the door for other search engines to get a little bit more of a foothold. And it might be that in the near future, we're finding that these other platforms for example, there's another search engine called DuckDuckGo. Maybe it becomes more relevant and your marketing team might need to start giving a little bit more attention to these other search platforms coming up soon. So that's as much as we're really saying about it right now, but we're watching the situation.
Got it. One last question for you. There's this story about Apple and the possibility that Apple could, because they're not in synchrony with Facebook, that Apple could actually block Facebook. Now, what's the latest on that, and how does that impact on what we're trying to do?
This is a big trend, and it's not really a possibility. It's happening, but it's not so much Apple blocking Facebook. But what it is with iOS 14, they actually had a feature. They rolled out a whole lot of features that made it much clearer to the user what they were opting in or out of, and gave them very easy buttons to press to say thank you or no thank you. I don't want to accept that tracking or that data usage. Companies like Facebook and others, actually, not just Facebook, were sort of lamenting that they would be deeply impacted and that was unfair to small businesses during COVID because it would actually affect the advertising effectiveness that those small businesses for the campaigns they're running on Facebook. So Apple sort of showed a little mercy and delayed it. But right now they're betaing iOS 14.4, which has the feature in it. So it's going to roll out the second that comes out of beta. And it remains to be seen just how much it'll impact Facebook's advertising campaigns. But what it's going to do is basically tell you very clearly every app you're using, what data it's using and how it's using it, and give you the chance to say no thank you. That includes Instagram itself, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and many other apps that are integrated into the Facebook ecosystem. It remains to be just, people are going to have to, we're going to have to see how many people opt in or out. I tend to think if you've given the choice to say, I don't want to share that data, then people will probably not. What I can tell you for sure is that Facebook seems to be taking it very seriously. If you open up your Facebook advertising platform, the dashboard for their advertising account, you'll see many warnings that say this is coming and it may impact things. So they're taking it seriously. And that leads me to believe that it's probably, they see it as a real threat. And so that's another thing to watch. And again, a reason to not be overly leveraged on one platform. So right now we're watching that really closely, and we're definitely going to be having some advice for our clients, and we're putting out some more content about that too. So we'll have that on our website shortly about this particular.
Great, Max. We're going to keep an eye on it, and we're going to keep an eye on you guys. And I just want to make sure are you guys going to be down in Miami? Are you going to have a booth down there?
Absolutely, we will. We're looking forward to seeing people's faces again, and that's exciting to us.
Absolutely. We'll see you in Miami again. For everyone else, Miami, not Boston, Miami from April 29th to May 3rd. And I'm going to go back to Jamil with our next, with Static One.
Thank you, Dr.
All right, great.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks so much, Max and Influx Marketing.